Not all Supes are created equal, and the gap between the weakest and the strongest isn't a matter of degree, it's a matter of kind. Today we're building the complete 7-tier power system for every major Supe in the boys. Let's get into it. Level 1. The manufactured. These are Supes who exist because Compound V was used on them, but whose powers are either limited, unreliable, or so specific that they provide minimal combat capability. They're powered individuals in the technical sense, but in any serious confrontation with a higher-tier Supe, they're essentially civilians. The Deep sits here, and the show knows it. His ability to communicate with sea life and breathe underwater is genuinely useful in exactly one context: water. On land, in a fight against any Supe above this tier, he's outmatched physically and completely outmatched tactically. His strength is above human baseline, but not dramatically so. His durability is limited, and his combat experience is essentially zero because he spent his career avoiding situations where his limitations would be exposed. What makes Level 1 interesting isn't the power ceiling, it's the psychology. Characters at this level are often the most desperate to prove they belong somewhere higher. The Deep's entire arc is built around the gap between his self-perception and his actual capability. He knows on some level that he's at the bottom, and that knowledge shapes everything he does. Level 2. The specialists. Level 2. Supes have genuine significant powers, but those powers are narrow. They're exceptional in their specific domain and limited outside of it. In the right context, they're dangerous. In the wrong context, they're manageable. A-Train at his peak belongs here. The fastest man alive is a genuinely terrifying thing to be. His speed gives him offensive capability that most Supes can't counter. He can hit you before you see him coming, and the kinetic force of a human body moving at those speeds is devastating. But his durability is limited. His strength outside of speed-based attacks is above average, but not exceptional. And his tactical intelligence, particularly in his earlier seasons, is compromised by ego and desperation. The key characteristic of Level 2 is that their power is real, but exploitable. You can't outrun A-Train. But you can set up a situation where his speed doesn't help him. You can attack him when he's not moving. You can use his psychology against him. Level 2. Supes are dangerous in a straight line. They're manageable when you control the geometry of the fight. Level 3. The capable. This is where the tier system starts to get genuinely interesting. Level 3 Supes have multiple significant abilities, real combat experience, and the tactical awareness to use both effectively. They're not just dangerous in specific contexts. They're dangerous in most contexts. Starlight, in her later seasons, belongs here. Her ability to absorb and redirect electricity gives her both offensive and defensive capability. She can generate blasts, powerful enough to stagger higher-tier Supes. She can fly. She can sustain damage that would kill a normal person. And crucially, she has something that most Supes at this level lack: genuine tactical intelligence, developed through years of operating in a system that was actively working against her. Kimiko also belongs at Level 3. Her regeneration combined with her combat ability makes her one of the most practically dangerous Supes in the show. She can take damage that would end most fights and keep going. Her offensive capability is significant, and her experience, the specific kind of combat experience that comes from being used as a weapon, gives her a practical effectiveness that pure power rankings don't fully capture. What separates Level 3 from Level 4 isn't just power, it's the ceiling. Level 3 Supes can hurt higher-tier opponents. They can't reliably beat them. Level 4, the threats. Level 4 is where the show's power dynamics start to shift in meaningful ways. These are Supes who represent genuine threats to almost anyone below them, and real complications for anyone above them. They have multiple significant abilities, substantial durability, and the experience to use everything they have effectively. Queen Maeve at her peak belongs here. Her strength rivals Homelander's in ways the show is careful about but consistent with. Her durability is extraordinary. She's one of the few Supes who can take a direct hit from a higher tier opponent and stay in the fight. And her combat experience, developed over years of actual field work rather than staged heroics, gives her a practical effectiveness that pure power comparisons understate. The key scene that establishes Maeve's level 4 status is her fight against Homelander in Season 3. She doesn't win, but she holds her own long enough to accomplish her objective. She takes hits that should end the fight and keeps going. She lands hits that visibly affect Homelander, and she does all of this while managing a tactical objective, getting Soldier Boy out of the equation, rather than just trying to survive. That combination of physical capability and tactical execution under pressure is the defining characteristic of Level 4. If you're finding this tier breakdown as interesting as I am, do me a favor and hit that like button right now. And subscribe, because we go deep on the boys every week and you don't want to miss what's coming. The top 3 tiers are where things get genuinely complicated. Level 5. The dangerous. Level 5 Supes are the ones that change the strategic calculus of any situation they enter. They're not just threats to individuals, they're threats to systems. Their power level is high enough that conventional responses don't work, and their experience is deep enough that they can exploit that advantage consistently. Soldier Boy belongs at level 5, and the specific reason he belongs here rather than higher is the nuclear blast. Not because the blast makes him more powerful in the traditional sense, though it does, but because of what it represents strategically. Soldier Boy has a power that specifically counters the abilities of higher-tier Supes. He can strip powers. He can hurt people who are otherwise unhurtable. That asymmetric capability is worth more in a tier assessment than raw power metrics. Add to that his combat experience, genuine military combat going back to World War II, refined through decades of fieldwork, hardened by years of Soviet captivity. And you have a Supe whose practical effectiveness significantly exceeds what his power level alone would suggest. Soldier Boy doesn't just hit hard, he hits smart. He creates situations. He uses positioning and pressure to generate the moments he needs. That's the product of experience that most Supes simply don't have. His psychological damage is a liability at this tier. The trauma responses, the unpredictability, the specific triggers that can compromise his tactical judgment. These are real weaknesses that a smart opponent can exploit. But they don't drop him below level 5. They just make him a more complicated level 5 than a clean power assessment would suggest. Level 6, the near apex. Level 6 is the tier that most people don't think about because the show's narrative tends to focus on the gap between everyone else and Homelander. But level 6 is real, and the characters who occupy it are genuinely terrifying in ways that the show sometimes undersells. Black Noir at his peak belongs here. Not the brain-damaged, trauma-compromised version we see in most of the show, the version that existed before Payback. Before the Soviet facility, before the decades of damage, that version of Black Noir was, by most assessments, the most dangerous pure combat Supe in Vaught's history. His strength was exceptional. His durability was extraordinary. His combat skill, developed through years of actual field work rather than staged heroics, was unmatched. And his ability to operate without the psychological complications that compromise most high-tier Supes made him uniquely effective. The show gives you glimpses of this in the Season 3 flashbacks. The version of Black Noir who fought Soldier Boy and survived, who took a nuclear blast and kept going, is operating at a level that most Supes never reach. The fact that he was ultimately defeated doesn't diminish the tier assessment, it contextualizes it. He was beaten by a level 5 Supe with a specific counter to his abilities, in a situation where he was outnumbered and outmaneuvered. That's not a level 6 failure. That's a level 6 being beaten by exceptional circumstances. What separates level 6 from level 7 isn't just power, it's the specific combination of power, durability, and versatility that makes a Supe genuinely difficult to counter through any conventional means. Level 6 Supes can be beaten, but beating them requires either a specific counter ability, overwhelming numbers, or exceptional tactical execution. They can't be beaten by simply being stronger or faster. You have to be smarter. Level 7. The Apex. There is one Supe in the boys' universe who occupies level 7. One character whose combination of power, durability, versatility, and psychological profile creates a threat level that exists in a category by itself. And you already know who it is. Homelander. But let's be specific about why. Because he's the strongest isn't a tier assessment. It's a conclusion. The analysis is more interesting than the conclusion. Homelander's physical power is the most obvious factor. His strength is essentially without practical limit in any scenario the show has presented. His laser vision can cut through almost anything, at almost any range. His flight gives him three-dimensional mobility that ground-based Supes can't match. And his durability is extraordinary. He's taken hits from Supes, weapons, and explosions that would end any other character and walked away without visible damage. But the physical metrics alone don't explain why he's in a tier by himself. Soldier Boy is physically comparable in several categories. Maeve approaches his strength. Black Noir, at his peak, was in the same conversation. What puts Homelander in level 7 isn't any single physical attribute. It's the combination. The laser vision is the key differentiator. It's a ranged precision weapon that can be used at any distance, in any direction, with essentially no cooldown. It can cut through materials that would stop any physical attack. It can be used at full power or with surgical precision. And it can be deployed faster than most Supes can react. No other Supe in the show has a comparable ranged capability, which means that any fight against Homelander has to be conducted at close range on his terms, in conditions where his other physical advantages are also fully in play. Add to that his flight, which gives him the ability to disengage from any ground-based fight, reposition, and re-engage on his terms. And you have a Supe who controls the geometry of every fight he's in. He decides the range, he decides the angle, he decides when to engage and when to pull back. That tactical control, combined with his physical capabilities, is what makes him genuinely difficult to counter, even for level 6 Supes. But here's the most important factor in Homelander's level 7 status, and it's the one that gets overlooked in most power discussions: his psychological profile. Homelander's need for validation, his fear of being seen as weak, his inability to tolerate situations where he doesn't have complete control. These are real liabilities. They create exploitable patterns. They make him predictable in certain situations. They've been used against him repeatedly by characters who understood his psychology. But in a pure power assessment, these psychological factors don't drop him below level 7. Because the gap between his physical capabilities and everyone else's is large enough that his psychological liabilities don't close it. You can outmaneuver Homelander psychologically. You can manipulate him. You can use his need for approval against him, but you can't beat him physically while doing it. And in a fight where the physical dimension is decisive, his psychological vulnerabilities are irrelevant. The only thing that genuinely threatens Homelander's level 7 status is Soldier Boy's nuclear blast, and the show is explicit about this. The blast is the one thing that can hurt him in a way that matters, the one counter that changes the physical calculus, which is why the Season 3 finale is so significant. It's the only moment in the show's history where Homelander is in genuine physical danger from another Supe, and his response, the calculation, the caution, the visible shift in his demeanor, tells you everything about how seriously he takes that threat. But Soldier Boy's blast is a specific counter to a specific ability. It doesn't make Soldier Boy more powerful than Homelander in a general sense. It makes him dangerous to Homelander in a specific sense. And that distinction is what keeps Homelander at level 7 and Soldier Boy at level 5. Now let's talk about Ryan. Because Ryan is the most important wild card in the entire tier system. Ryan is a child. His powers are still developing. His experience is essentially zero. By current metrics, he belongs somewhere around level 2 or 3. Significant powers, limited application, no combat experience. But Ryan's ceiling is unknown, and the show has been careful about this. His powers appear to match or exceed his father's in raw potential. His laser vision, demonstrated in Season 3, is powerful enough to kill. His durability appears significant, and he's still growing. The question the show is building toward isn't where Ryan is in the tier system right now, it's where he ends up. Whether the person who shapes his development, whether that's Homelander or someone else, produces a level 7 Supe with Homelander's power and a completely different psychology, or whether it produces something worse. Because here's the thing about the tier system that the show understands better than most power fantasy narratives. The tier isn't just about what you can do, it's about what you're willing to do. Homelander is level 7, not just because of his capabilities, but because of his willingness to use them without constraint. A Supe with identical powers and genuine moral development would be a different kind of level 7. Less dangerous in some ways, more dangerous in others. Ryan is the show's open question about whether the tier system has to produce what it's produced so far, whether power at that level inevitably leads to what Homelander became, or whether the right development, the right relationships, the right choices can produce something different. The answer to that question is the most important thing the boys hasn't told us yet. So here's my question for you. Where do you think Ryan ends up in this tier system? And is there any Supe we haven't seen yet who could challenge Homelander's level 7 status? Drop your answer in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this breakdown of the 7 levels of Supes, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We go deep on the boys every week. Until next time, in this world, power isn't just about what you can do. It's about what you're willing to become.